John tells us Jesus returned to Bethany, to the house of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. While there, Lazarus' sister Mary, so overcome with joy and gratitude with what Jesus had done, fell to his feet, began crying, washing his feet with her tears, and then taking a jar of pure nard, very costly ointment that was used to prepare bodies for burial, and began to anoint his feet. When she opened the jar, the aroma from it filled the whole house. The disciples were stunned by this. Judas Iscariot looked down and saw this and cried out, saying, "This ointment could have been sold for a great sum of money, an entire year's worth of wages, and she wastes it. Think of the poor that we could have cared for." Now, Judas didn't say this out of concern for the poor, but he was the treasurer for the group, the keeper of the purse, and he used to steal from it. So he saw the money that he could have stolen being taken from him. And Jesus turned to the disciples and said, "You will have the poor with you always, but I am here but a brief time." What Mary does, she does in love. It was an interesting thing when we looked at this gospel text at our pastor's study group. What I saw first and what the group saw first were two very different things. What did you get out of the story? There's a lot going on. We have Judas the thief. We have Jesus being readied for burial. We have the gratitude of Mary. What caught your attention? The clergy all saw the theft by Judas. That was the first thing they latched on to and went with that. But it wasn't what caught mine. It was a number of years ago. I was serving a congregation in Albertus when the phone call came in one evening. "Pastor, my Aunt B is in the hospital. She's at the Lehigh Valley Hospital in the emergency room. The doctors say this will be it." So I hurried down Cedar Crest and arrived in the emergency room. And there was B. Fenstermacher in her cubicle. A smile came over her face when she saw her pastor come into the room, knowing that God's presence was there. She reached out her hand, and I took her hand. I offered a prayer, and she continued to hold on to my hand. She closed her eyes. As we stood there in that cubicle in the hospital, watching the little blip get softer and softer until she passed away. Her last moments of comfort, knowing that there was somebody there holding her hand. Carl was dying of cancer, waiting for his youngest daughter to come. He's in hospice on 17th Street. She'd got up from Maryland, walked into the room, cried out, "Daddy," fell to her knees, took his hands, and she laid her head on his chest. He was able to breathe his last and go peacefully. Dale had come home. He was in hospice, 24, maybe 48 hours at the most. The cancer had finally reached a point where there was nothing that could be done. His family gathered around. They had taken his socks off his feet. He had always loved it when somebody would rub his feet. And his wife, his children, and grandchildren all taking turns. One last time. One last touch. An act of love. Mary kneels at Jesus' feet. One last touch. one last act of love, one bit of time of human contact. What a powerful thing it is, human contact. Simple handshake, and yet so meaningful. Because the opposite being quite powerful too. Reach out your hand to shake somebody else's hand and have them ignore you. How powerfully opposite that is. To be ignored, to be unloved, to be untouched. India has a whole system of people that are so beneath everybody else. Untouchable. You wouldn't dare touch them, and nobody does. Not a handshake, not a hand on a shoulder. What must it be like to suffer? How powerful it is, human contact. How powerful and loving a gesture it is. A simple hand on a shoulder, a hug to somebody in need. Smile and an embrace to somebody celebrating. Power of love shared with simple gestures. Jesus came into our lives to give his life for us, to bring us a love that he asks us to share with one another. So many simple and easy ways. A hand in a hand, an arm over a shoulder. God's love, passed on and shared in great power with one another. Amen.